Mornings often seem simple because they make up only a small part of the day, but the truth is that the first few hours after waking up can have a powerful effect on energy levels, mood, concentration, and productivity for the rest of the day. And many people unknowingly start their mornings with habits that quietly drain their energy before the day has even properly begun. And because these habits are repeated every day, they eventually begin feeling normal, even though they may be contributing to constant fatigue. And one of the most common mistakes people make is immediately checking their phones after waking up, because the brain is transitioning from sleep into wakefulness, and exposing it instantly to notifications, messages, videos, emails, and endless information can create a feeling of stress and mental overload before the day has even started. And instead of waking up naturally, many people begin their mornings by reacting to the demands and distractions of the outside world, which can increase anxiety and make the mind feel exhausted much earlier in the day. And another habit that drains energy is skipping breakfast or waiting too long to eat, because after several hours of sleep, the body has gone without food for an extended period. And although some people feel comfortable delaying meals, others may experience reduced concentration, irritability, and lower energy levels when their bodies do not receive nutrients during the morning. And this effect can become even stronger if the first meal consists mainly of sugary foods that provide a short burst of energy, followed by a crash. And another common mistake involves drinking very little water, because the body loses fluids during sleep through breathing and sweating. And many people begin their mornings with coffee or other drinks without replacing the water lost overnight. And even mild dehydration can affect mood, concentration, and physical performance, causing people to feel sluggish without understanding why. And another habit that quietly drains energy all day is waking up and remaining completely inactive, because many individuals go from bed to chair to car to desk with almost no movement. And while resting may seem like a way to preserve energy, the body actually responds positively to movement, because physical activity improves blood circulation, increases oxygen delivery, and helps the brain become more alert. And when mornings are completely inactive, people often spend the rest of the day feeling stiff, tired, and mentally slow. And perhaps one of the reasons these habits are so powerful is because mornings act like the foundation of the day, and small decisions made during those first hours often influence everything that follows, because energy is not created suddenly in the afternoon, but begins building from the moment a person opens their eyes. And the patterns established in the morning frequently determine how the body and brain function for many hours afterward. Another habit that drains energy throughout the day is rushing through the morning, because many people wake up late, immediately begin worrying about responsibilities, and spend the first hour feeling stressed and hurried. And while occasional busy mornings are unavoidable, constantly beginning the day in a state of panic activates stress responses inside the body, causing the nervous system to remain on high alert. And when stress hormones stay elevated for long periods, mental exhaustion and irritability often appear much earlier than they otherwise would. And another major mistake involves not getting any sunlight in the morning, because sunlight plays an important role in regulating the body's internal clock. And exposure to natural light shortly after waking helps signal to the brain that it is time to be alert and active. And when people spend their mornings indoors under artificial lighting, the brain may struggle to fully transition into wakefulness, leading to lower energy and difficulties maintaining healthy sleep patterns later at night. And another surprisingly common habit is relying on excessive caffeine immediately after waking, because many people believe they cannot function without coffee, and while caffeine can temporarily increase alertness, it does not actually create energy. And when people become dependent on large amounts of caffeine, they may experience energy crashes later in the day, and sometimes ignore the deeper reasons behind their exhaustion, such as poor sleep or chronic stress. And another habit that affects energy is constantly consuming negative information during the morning, because many individuals begin the day scrolling through stressful news, reading arguments online, or exposing themselves to emotionally overwhelming content. And while staying informed is important, flooding the mind with negativity immediately after waking can influence mood and stress levels for the rest of the day, because the brain tends to carry emotional states forward. And another mistake people make is sacrificing sleep in order to wake up earlier, because some individuals believe productivity means sleeping less. But the body views sleep as one of its most essential recovery processes, And even small amounts of sleep deprivation, repeated over time, can significantly affect concentration, motivation, mood, and physical energy.
And perhaps one of the most overlooked truths about energy is that feeling energetic is not simply about adding more stimulation, but about removing unnecessary drains.
Because many people spend their lives searching for supplements, drinks, and shortcuts without realizing that their daily habits are quietly stealing energy faster than anything can replace it. And over time, these habits interact with one another, creating cycles where poor mornings lead to low energy leads to unhealthy choices, and unhealthy choices make the next morning even more difficult, creating patterns that gradually become harder to escape. Beyond physical habits, there are also mental habits that drain energy throughout the day. And one of the most powerful examples is beginning the morning with worry. Because many people wake up and immediately start thinking about problems, deadlines, responsibilities, and everything that could go wrong. And while planning is necessary, constantly starting the day with anxiety places the mind in a defensive state before anything has actually happened. And over time, this pattern can leave people mentally exhausted before noon even arrives. And another habit involves comparing yourself to others first thing in the morning. Because social media exposes people to carefully selected moments from other lives. And beginning the day with comparisons can create feelings of inadequacy, dissatisfaction, and unnecessary stress. And these emotions consume mental energy that could otherwise be used for productive and meaningful activities. And another major energy drain is spending mornings without any purpose. Because when people wake up without clear intentions, they often drift through the first hours of the day, reacting to distractions, instead of directing their attention toward things that truly matter. And this lack of direction can make the entire day feel chaotic and exhausting. And another mistake many people make is constantly postponing responsibilities. Because unfinished tasks occupy mental space, and when important responsibilities are repeatedly delayed, the brain continues thinking about them in the background, creating stress and draining emotional resources. And another habit that quietly steals energy is perfectionism, because some people place enormous pressure on themselves, expecting every day to be flawless and every task to be completed perfectly. And these unrealistic expectations often lead to disappointment, frustration, and chronic stress, which consume far more energy than mistakes themselves. And another powerful energy drain is never allowing the mind to rest, because modern life provides endless stimulation through phones, music, videos, notifications, and entertainment. And many people fill every empty moment with information, leaving the brain with almost no opportunity to recover. And over time, constant stimulation can create mental fatigue, even if physical demands remain relatively low. And perhaps this explains why so many individuals describe themselves as feeling exhausted despite not performing physically demanding work. Because the greatest energy drain in modern society is often not physical labor, but continuous mental overload. And while the body evolved to handle short periods of stress, followed by recovery, modern lifestyles frequently expose people to endless streams of stimulation without providing enough opportunities for true rest. And because these conditions develop gradually, many people adapt to them and begin assuming that feeling tired every day is simply a normal part of adult life, when in reality the body may be sending signals that something needs to change. Of all the habits that drain energy throughout the day, perhaps the most dangerous is believing that constant exhaustion is normal. Because once people accept fatigue as an unavoidable part of life, they stop looking for the reasons behind it and begin relying on caffeine, motivation, or sheer willpower to push themselves forward. And although the human body is capable of functioning under these conditions for surprisingly long periods, this does not mean it is thriving. Because energy is produced through a balance of sleep, nutrition, movement, stress management, hydration, and recovery. And when any of these areas become neglected, the effects accumulate slowly over time. And perhaps this is why small morning habits matter so much, because they are repeated hundreds and thousands of times throughout life. And while one stressful morning or one skipped breakfast may not have dramatic consequences, the repetition of these behaviors day after day gradually shapes how the body feels and functions. And another important truth is that energy does not come only from physical sources, because emotions, relationships, thoughts, and mental habits also influence how people feel. And this explains why two individuals with similar schedules can experience very different levels of energy, depending on how they manage stress and structure their daily routines. And ultimately, the 7 things you do in the morning that drain your energy all day are not necessarily dramatic or obvious, because they are often ordinary behaviors that have become so familiar that people no longer question them. But the body never stops responding to the choices made each day. And understanding these habits reveals that many people do not need extraordinary solutions to feel better, because sometimes more energy comes not from adding something new, but from removing the small routines that quietly steal it every morning. And perhaps the most surprising realization is that the body wants to feel energetic, because humans were not designed to spend their lives constantly tired and exhausted. And when the conditions are right, the body naturally moves toward balance, recovery, and vitality. And in the end, the difference between feeling drained all day and feeling truly alive often begins with the habits repeated during the first moments after waking. Because mornings do not simply start the day, they often shape the entire experience that follows, and small choices made before breakfast can influence energy, mood, focus, and well-being long after the sun has risen.